Welcome one and all to Inside LAFC podcast. We are live on LAFC YouTube. We are live on LAFC Facebook. I am Max Bretos alongside Benny Feilhaber. Thanks for joining us in. And Benny, I always said when we started this Mark II or Mark III of Inside LAFC podcast, this second show live was going to be the biggest one because now we get to talk about a game. So first show, we're getting used to it, but now we get into the meat and potatoes. I'm excited. I know you're probably excited as well.
Yeah, it was fun to watch a game, right? The season started. I think we're all excited about the win this last weekend and a lot to talk about.
We sure do. So we're not only going to talk about what happened on Saturday as LAFC continue their winning ways in MLS season openers. We'll also preview tomorrow night, second leg, LAFC Colorado Rapids. So everything is on the line. LAFC need to get the result. We'll tell you what that means, what it will look like so that they can get into the round of 16 against the Columbus Crew. So work to be done. But let's first and foremost talk about what happened on Saturday. And Benny, you were part of the first season opener, which LAFC won. That was the only away win. Every other season opener has been at home. And now they're 8-0-0. Perfect. I'm sure when that game in Seattle took place, you never thought we would be here. But look at that. Eight wins out of 8.
Yeah, it's impressive. And I don't know if any of them are as impressive as the one that I took part in, obviously, the road game in Seattle. But we didn't have a stadium back then, so I don't think we could have played a game at home at that point in time. But, since then, 7 wins at home. It is very impressive. And I think it's, become almost what's expected, should I say, for LAFC to win games at home. And I think that's one of the reasons why, there's been so much success in that building and with the organization.
I also forgot, make sure to leave comments so you can be part of the show. That's why we're doing this live for us on YouTube as well as live on Facebook. John joining us here. He's already had the first comment. We always like to see who has the first comment. So we want to hear what you thought about the win over Minnesota and everything that happened. The Tifo, the Buanga bobblehead, and of course the Jeremy Abobasi game winner. That is all on offer here. But Benny, let's talk about what happened here in this. We know that they're going to have 2 games a week, at least for the first 2 weeks, hopefully for the first month. So this is going to be very busy. There are some player rotations. And LAFC was part of that with regards to 3 changes. And we'll talk about that and what it's going to look like. I did want to start a little bit as we go into the season openers about what we saw on that Tifo. The LAFC 3252 knocking it out of the park with a LA Fire Department Tifo. It had volume. It had depth. And it was done with a lot of heart. And I think every home team had a Tifo pretty much, I believe. I saw a lot. And they were good ones. But this stood apart. And I think it's going to have a lasting impression because the whole city paid notice. It was for a city that has been aching because of what happened in Altadena, what happened in the Palisades and throughout Southern California. It feels like it never even crazy just a few weeks ago. That brought it together. It was on the local news circuit. Everyone was, whether they were a soccer fan or not, really engaged and locked into it. It was done well. What were your thoughts when you saw them lift that?
Yeah, I mean, it was special. I think Tifos are such a unique thing about soccer, right? And, the best fans, I think, come up with really good ideas. And this one, kind of hit it out of the park in the sense that it's a very emotional thing that happened with, all the Southern Californians. And I don't live in Southern California anymore, but I have parents, I have sisters, or one sister, but I have family there. And so, checking in with them while things were happening, it was scary. And obviously seeing the images that we all saw across the country. And so for the firefighters that, dedicate themselves to, keep us safe in those moments, those dangerous moments of our lives. And so it was really heartfelt for, our fans to put that up there and the time and the detail. It looks incredibly detailed. There were 2 pieces, right? The 2 firemen plus the skyline in the background. And so, yeah, it was amazing and deserved all the attention that it got.
And I think we'll see that image time and time again, because remember the the fires, this is something the city are going to be dealing with for years. And anytime someone needs some wind in their sails or a lift, they will see those images and remind everyone that we are in this together. And LAFC 3252, thank you for that on behalf of everyone. Leave a comment about what that Tifo meant to you. If you were there, Garen we mentioned the Bouanga bobblehead. He did say the distribution was improved. Everyone got one when they came in, so we're glad to hear that. But I'd love to hear what you thought about the Tifo, because it is, I've heard a lot of moving comments about what it meant for a lot of people, so well done. And there'll be more Tifos, and that will certainly be along the great Tifos that 3252 have done through the years. Remember the Guns N' Roses one, the Queen, the Freddie Mercury, the Kobe. Oh, it's unbelievable. What does it do, by the way, Benny, when you see a Tifo? You're out there on the field and you see that. What does it do for a player?
Well, there's times you notice it and there's times you don't, unfortunately. You know, you're so locked into the game and what your job is in that moment that sometimes you miss it, right? And so sometimes, I remember one time when I was playing for Sporting Kansas City, they made a Tifo of me. And I didn't notice it until after the game. And I was devastated that I didn't get to see it until after. And obviously it was fantastic to see it in hindsight. But yeah, it's one of those things that sometimes you miss as a player and sometimes you notice as a fan and as someone who's watching the game from the TV. It obviously it was emotional, you know, gives you goosebumps at that moment in time.
Excellent. I'm sorry you missed that. That's a bummer. You will never get to see it lifted. You get to see it maybe when it's at the stadium.
Right. Yeah. It's different, but it's okay. It's all right.
Okay. It stayed with him. So let's talk about this game. LAFC defeating Minnesota United 1-0, getting that goal from Jeremy Ebobisse. I wanted to talk about the lineup decisions. There's going to be rotation and 3 new players coming in. David Martinez after Nate Ordaz started. We're talking about the first leg of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, obviously. Martinez coming in. Marlon, which was surprising because Eddie Segura started the whole preseason, and Eddie Segura would come in a little bit later, coming in alongside Aaron Long. And then the third one, which may be even more surprising, Jeremy Ebobisse coming in for Olivier Giroud. We did see Giroud. Your thoughts when you saw that starting 11, knowing full well that LAFC have to be mindful about their roster. They may not be the deepest team now. That could be a strength down the road, but right now they have to play it pretty close to the vest.
Right. And I don't think there's too much to take from, you know, the slight changes in the roster other than maybe looking at the guys that weren't substituted, where, you know, maybe Steve sees certain guys as locks, guys that he needs on that starting 11 to put together, you know, a good performance and have the best chance to get a result. But you can see, you know, the first 11 in the first game and then the next 3. So maybe there's a first 14 right now in the mix in terms of, you know, who might substitute someone for midweek games or CCC games or whatnot, especially now in the beginning of the season where, like you said, a lot of games potentially. If we were to beat Colorado tomorrow, then you got 2 more games coming up on midweek. So there's tons of games early on. Everybody isn't fully fit. And again, we've talked about this. Other than Denny Bouanga, who seems to never miss a minute, guys need to, you know, rest at times and not necessarily play 180 minutes every single week.
So Denny Bouanga, you're not going to have to pull out. They used all 5 substitutions, by the way. So Yaya Boa came in late and Kosi Tafari in important minutes, obviously, because they had to see out that game. But I think you're going to see the regular guys. But Bouanga going in a full 90 minutes. I don't think Igor Jesus is going to come off a game anytime, nor is Aaron Long, and obviously not Hugo Lloris. So they're going to have those core guys. And this was something we saw last season where 7 or 8 games into the year, there were a bunch of guys that played every minute of every game. I think they're going to have 4 or 5 of that. The lineup came in and talking about the first half, it was a grind. Yeah. And I think we talked about it last week. Minnesota is going to be a good team. I had them finishing, I believe, 4th in the West in my predictions, and I'm going to stick with it because they look pretty good. We knew what they were going to do, and they were very tough to crack in that first 45.
Yeah, and I think, look, the game sets up really well for a team like Minnesota. I agree with you. I think Minnesota is going to be, you know, I don't know where it finishes because MLS is just so difficult to really know if they're going to be top 4, top 6, whatever. But I do think Minnesota is one of the top teams in the Western Conference with the players that they have, the style of play. And you saw it, you know, in the first game of the year extremely organized. They're very comfortable in a lower block and then trying to expose space that they create on those counterattacks. And so, it was always going to be a tough game for LAFC, a home game where LAFC wants to have a little bit more of the ball and dictate how the game goes. And that perfectly suits the opponent. And so, in the first half, we saw Minnesota be the better team. Really, they sat back. They didn't have as much possession throughout the entire course of the game, but they sat back and they were able to expose several times LAFC on the counter. Some big chances, shot off the post. And at the end of the day, in that first half, I think everybody was happy that the half was over and that it was still 0-0. But it was definitely a first half that, we didn't see the best version of LAFC. And at the end of the day, I think going into the second half, we made some big changes that allowed the team to be in a better spot and ultimately get the result that they got.
I would say LAFC's had some good fortune. I think in the Colorado game, which we'll talk, they could have had another penalty called against them. And then that post from Yeboah, I mean, that's like, and then there was that deflection where it bounced off Yeboah, and then Lloris, who was off to a great start, nothing he could have done to that Mihailovic goal. It came right to him, but his reactions were on. So LAFC have had some good fortune, because the reality here, Benny, if they fall behind Minnesota down a goal, that's going to be some heavy lifting, because they could tighten the bolts even more defensively. And this is that defensive block is something LAFC is going to see a lot. And we also got to keep in mind that LAFC is a team that likes to maybe sit back and give the opponent the ball, but we're seeing them learn to play different ways, which is, Steve Cherundolo has said it, we have to be adept. And I think it's not just the way they play, but how they line up. But they were able to figure some things out here against the Loons. Yeah.
And look, I think I read something where Steve said, we want to try and have a little bit more of the ball than we've had in past years, but he's also never going to be the kind of coach that says, this is how we have to play. We have to have the ball in order to win. And this is style over performance. It's never going to be that way. And I think Steve understands, looking at how the league works, it's always a copycat league to some extent. And we talked about it. I think some of the teams that have won and had success over the last couple of years, you look at the Galaxy, who won last year, very heavily possession based. Columbus Crew, who won the year before, very heavily possession based. And so as much as you want to be a team that when you have the lead, you can counter and create, a 1-goal lead into a 2 or 3-goal lead, you also want to be able to have the ball and create with possession, not for possession's sake, but because of the creativity of the players that you have around, the space that you take up, and the amount of pressure that you put on the other team. So I do think that that's a learning process still for this team. But again, and this is one of the things that we talked about, Max, a little bit, is the ability that Steve has to make the team extremely organized defensively, right? With the small adjustments that they made at halftime, and just in general, you look at the team in general, it's a difficult team to break down. And they do the little things right. I mean, I rewatched the game earlier today, and I'm seeing Denny Bouanga make a defensive tackle in the 73rd minute. It was still 0-0 at that point, right? So the ability for your best player on the offensive half to run 80 yards back and get a goal kick instead of, give up a cross or a corner or whatever, that allows you to stay at 0-0 to now give you the opportunity to get 1 goal to win the game. And I think that's one thing that some people, I think, sometimes miss with what is so good about this team. They're willing to do the little dirty work in order to give themselves an opportunity to win the game late.
Love it. We are live on LAFC YouTube, live on LAFC Facebook. Leave a comment. We will answer all of them, or as many as we can. Jesse did comment about the Tifo. He says it's the best one so far. And I think I said, David, we need more bobblehead games. Yeah, I'll let the powers that be know about that. But we'll get some of these questions, because we're going to get to the adjustments that were made at half, and they worked. And Taylor Twellman on the broadcast mentioned how it was a simple one where Timothy Tillman moved to the right and Mark Delgado to the left. And Matt Doyle, who's another great follow, he did a little video presentation there on the goal specifically. Mark Delgado's a better passer, and he was able to connect that to Denny Bouanga, which would eventually lead to the goal. But I want to talk to you about adjustments in general and what a reflection this is on the coach. Steve Cherundolo, knowing his team, it's an old adage, I guess, when you get your team in the locker room and how do they react? Good coaches generally see a good reaction when things haven't gone well in the first half. And that's what we saw. So getting into the coaching sideline here, what he might have been able to see where he was able to not only unlock the moment where LAFC got the goal, but really dominate that second half.
Yeah. And before we get to the goal, which I think is a very interesting play in the game that I think explain a lot of things. The first thing is kind of what I was talking about. I think that Steve saw that they were getting exposed in counterattacking situations, and whether it was the immediate reaction after the loss of possession, whether it was the spacing that the players were in with the ball, but he made adjustments, and I don't think it's something that you necessarily can say, okay, this is exactly what he did, but he could have just worded it, right? Verbally, hey guys, when we lose the ball, we got to get pressure on the ball quicker, right? And we got to get bodies once somebody gets pressure on the ball behind the ball, because what they're doing is they're going 100 miles an hour as soon as they win the ball, playing the ball to their, very quick and pacey players, and they're exposing us in space. And so I think that was one thing that we just didn't see in the second half. They were not able to win the ball and get up the field. I barely remember one action where I think they got fouled top of the box, where Timothy Tillman, I think, let a dummy go through and it didn't work out, and then they recovered and committed a foul. Other than that, I really don't remember many chances that, Minnesota had the opportunity to counter. And so you take that away from them, you're almost guaranteeing a 0-0 draw at a minimum, right? And so I think that was the first thing that Steve did that was very, very good. And then going to the goal and just the overall Mark Delgado on the left side, Timothy Tillman on the right. What Timothy Tillman is very good at is he's good with the ball in his feet, right? He can get out of little tight spaces. We talk about being able to dribble out of a phone booth, right? He has that ability, and that's a little bit of what he did in that play. Whereas Mark Delgado isn't necessarily that kind of player. He's not the guy that's going to be able to, tiptoe his way out of 2 or 3 defenders, but he is the guy that is able to connect that longer ball in between the lines to find Denny Bouanga. And I mean, in the second half, it almost looked like, that was Mark Delgado's sole purpose on the ball, is find Bouanga as many times as you can. And obviously the goal is exactly that, where Timothy Tillman is able to kind of complete a couple passes, sidestep a couple players. The ball's opened up, I think, from Igor Jesus all the way to Mark Delgado, who then just quickly plays the ball, I think, with the outside of his foot to Bouanga. And now you get Bouanga doing what he does best, which is in space. And even if he wasn't able to dribble someone, then it allows him to play, a ball to Ordaz, who then, very high soccer IQ, to lay that ball off to Jeremy Ebobisse with the right pace, the right angle. Everything was perfect, where Ebobisse obviously is able to do the rest with a little bit of an easier way to do that than if the ball's, jammed into him. And obviously it's never easy to put the ball up or V, but he made it look easy. And obviously the goal, gets us 3 points.
Igor Jesus, who is becoming a lot of folks' favorite player, he had I was trying to think of a comparison. Remember Nigel de Jong, the Dutch guy? Big,
yeah, well, I remember I played with Nigel de Jong.
That's right.
In Hamburg.
That's right. What do you think? Is that a decent comparison?
Well, I don't want to see Igor Jesus stick his leg out, straight into people and get red cards. But
with that exception, of course.
Yeah, he's feisty. I mean, so he's been one of the guys that we talked about as well as a key player last week, and he has shown very well. He's been able to provide exactly what is needed from a tenacity standpoint, a pit bull, a ball winner. But the thing that I've started to notice that I've really enjoyed from him is he is mobile when we have the ball, right? And so he doesn't have the ball. Somebody else on our team has the ball, and he's able to find certain pockets where, give it to me, I'm the outlet, and now I can go and play. It's something that Ilie Sanchez was very good at, but I don't think Ilie was as mobile in terms of getting east and west and providing those opportunities. So, Igor Jesus has been exactly what I think everybody would have hoped. And hopefully he continues to, mature and feel more comfortable in this league, because he looks like he's going to be a big player on this team.
We remind you to leave a comment on YouTube or Facebook, and they're pouring in. Vince said he loved the breakdown of the midfield skill set. I thought you nailed that, Benny, about phone booth, which is a dated reference, but I think people still get it. I haven't been in a phone booth in a while, but you get the idea in a contained space and how Mark Delgado can be a little more expansive. And it's nice to have both of that. So props to that, certainly. And a couple comments here about Daniel says, always a pleasure to hear from a black and gold OG. A greeting to you, Benny. But one person saying, I really like the starting lineup this weekend, and I hope we see more of that. And we may see it. Even the guys coming off, Nathan Ordaz came out, and once again, you see him just come out like a rocket. Even Olivier Giroud in a small set, he had that chance. He's got to finish that. But, I imagine he starts on Tuesday. It'll be rotation. But this lineup was a good option. But you also see about how these guys can come off the bench and close out a game, whether it was Ordaz, Giroud, Tafari, even Yaboa got some minutes, that there's going to be more options. But this is going to be one of many 11s I think we'll see over the next few weeks, knock on wood, if LAFC advance out of the CCC.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about it. Steve, I think, talks about it. Everybody in MLS talks about it. Depth is incredibly important, right? Whether it's the multitude of games, whether it's the weather, the travel, whether it's injuries, right, that happen throughout the course of the season, it's important that you can rely on more than 11, 14 players. And I think that LAFC is going to find that they're going to be one of the deeper teams, not only because they have the quality, but because Steve gives opportunities to different players, right? And so I will say this. I know it's podcast number 2, Max, but I will say that I think Jeremy Bobasy is eventually going to be the guy that LAFC is going to rely on to be a starter up there, because he is just very mobile. He is a guy that is able to come deeper into certain pockets and help the team get out of certain situations. And at that point, when he's able to get out of those situations and maybe complete a pass to one of the wingers that take it in towards those dangerous areas, he gets his butt back into the box to provide opportunities to get on the end of things. And look, I think Giroud is going to have a critical part to play in this team as well. I just don't know if it's playing every single game from the start. And like you said, I think he found some good moments in those last 10, 15 minutes that he came in, and he should have had a goal. But that will come, right? You expect Giroud to score some of those chances. He's not going to score every single one of them, but he's going to get on the end of those, and he's going to put some of those away. And I think that kind of role within this team is going to suit him really well. And my guess is, he's a World Cup champion on a team that he scored no goals as the striker. He's a very team-oriented person from the outside looking in. So I think he'll be more than, maybe not happy, but he will do the job that is required for him to find success within the group.
We'll see how that pans out, but that's a really good point. And the more players you can rely on, the better. If Jeremy goes in there, I think Giroud will fill a role. I still think he'll start a fair bit, but there's plenty of ball to share. I want to talk about the Bobasy goal, but I want to answer a question from Jesse. Should Ordaz be in the starting 11? Let's say more often than not, because I think they're both, but he's certainly earned that. I do want to say something about David Martinez, and I saw a tweet from LAFC Daniel, who does a great job. And he said every time David Martinez is on the ball, because I would imagine it would be Ordaz for Martinez, you get this feeling of standing up, right? He goes on these runs, and it gets really exciting. And he's a young player, and I think we'll see more of that. So I think we saw something good from Martinez. But if it's a pinch game, let's talk about tomorrow. Do you think Ordaz starts a little more frequently?
That's a tough one. I really don't have an answer. I think it's hard for me to answer that by only watching 2 soccer games as opposed to what they're doing every day in training. And that's one of the, difficulties as a fan as well. I think that both of them play a part in this game, right? There's no doubt that whoever starts is probably going to get subbed off for the other guy that doesn't start. And to be honest, that's what I think needs to happen. And it's almost like it doesn't really matter who starts necessarily. They're both going to play, 60 and 30 or something like that. But both of them, they're both young, right? David Martinez, I think, is 19. Nathan Ordaz is 21? Something around there? Or is he younger as well?
20.
Something around there. They're both very young. They're both, haven't had a lot of experience in first team minutes. And I think they're both going to play big parts this year, right? That that hole that Matty Bogusz left is huge. Somebody needs to fill those shoes, and I don't know if any one person could do it. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and the ability that Steve has to kind of pick and choose who's in better form to start them one game and then the other, 2 months later when they're in better form. I think that's what he's looking for, because I think he knows that it's probably not going to be one guy starting 34 games all year.
I think that's a great point. This is a development for LAFC, because under Steve Cherundolo's watch, they've never been a young team. They've never really relied, but they're relying on two very young players. I mean, Bogusz wasn't old by any means, but certainly more seasoned than these two guys. But they are leaning into youth, which is exciting too, because we're seeing them reap those benefits. Let's talk about the Abobasi goal. This is great stuff. The comments are rolling in. Matthew saying we need more Tafari. I think we might see it, and we talked about that in the first episode. Abobasi's goal, beautifully taken, but this was a team effort. The ball was won way back. We already talked about how it built up from Delgado to Bouanga and then Ordaz with such an unselfish play. And remember how unselfish it was in the America game where Giroud let him get through to score that goal. Great qualities that we're seeing. Let's go. What stood out about that Abobasi goal from any part that you saw that made it all possible?
Yeah, so we talked about the buildup a little bit, right? And I think that's definitely one of them, but we've talked about that, and I want to focus in a little bit more on the front three, because it is very interesting, and I'm assuming this is by design, but the ability that in the second half, LAFC had to keep possession, not give up counterattacks, and hold on to control of the game for longer periods of the game. They were able to get their outside backs higher up. And so the width came from their outside backs, right? From Hollingshead and from Palencia. And what it allowed the wingers to do is to be a little bit more narrow. And now Minnesota is defending three forwards, which is not normal. Usually nowadays people play a 4-3-3. You have to defend one forward, maybe a 4-4-2, you defend two. It's rare that you have the narrow wingers, as I call it. And now you have three forwards in there. And in the goal, right? And I know it was a transitional sort of moment, so it's not like the outside backs were up, but the ability for Ordaz to be now in between. He was the middle guy. Bouanga made the run on the left, and Ordaz was in between him and Abobasi, as opposed to on the right wing. And he's the guy that receives the ball and then lays it off to Abobasi, and now Abobasi finishes it. And so what that allows a team to do is to have more of those moments where it doesn't have to be, perfect in the sense that, hey, this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to get the ball to Denny Bouanga, and then, Ordaz is going to run inside, get the ball, free up Abobasi. No, what happens is it's a little bit of chaos, and it's chaotic for the defensive team at that point, right? Who's picking up who? Wait, what is this guy doing? The right winger is inside as a 9, and now Jeremy Abobasi is leaked out a little bit. And it creates confusion, and it's in those moments of confusion that you create space and time, and you get the opportunity to score that goal. So I think it was fantastic. And keep in mind, LAFC is not going to be playing a back five every game, right? Not every team plays a back five, and I think Minnesota did a really good job of dealing with those three narrow wingers. You play a back four, and there's only two center backs, and there's three guys in between the lines. I mean, it can create a lot of problems. And I really like what Steve's done there. And I think that's what led to the goal ultimately.
Yeah, it's about those moments. And while you have to react, as LAFC did, the defense has to counter that, and they didn't. And I think Fermin even mentioned he liked the fact that Bouanga passed the ball. And I think he's going to start being more. Bouanga's always bears down, pins the ears back, and goes for it. And that's what's made him so dangerous. But if we can see that new development where he beats a defender as he did, and gets that ball across. It all happened so quickly, to your point, Benny, that it made it possible. Good habits, certainly, for LAFC. Someone commented about Cengiz Under. I don't know when we're going to see him. It was Gomez. Maybe we talk a little bit about that, because he's going to get incorporated here, and he is a decorated player, and we'll get a good look. And that will probably come in maybe at the expense of Martinez and or Ordaz. I think when he gets into this team, Benny, I think we'll see him play, because again, it's a 6-month deal. So he's on the clock to play those 6 months or work into a new contract. So I don't think he's here to kind of make up numbers. I would imagine this is a player that they have identified to come in and play a big role, and he has played very well for club and country over the years. So I don't know. I don't know what he's going to look like, but my guess is he is going to come here and play.
Yeah, I know very little of him, but I think that LAFC has done this many times in their lifetime, where they bring players in for short-term loans with the ability to buy at the end, and they want to give them opportunities, obviously. And I think even when I played there in the first season, I remember guys like I know different situations. Not everybody was a loanee, but Edward Atuesta was a loanee. With the option to buy. I'm pretty sure Eddie Segura was one. I don't remember if
Lewis O'Brien last season was well. There's a bunch of guys, certainly.
I don't remember. You might know better than I do if Omar Gabber was a loanee or he was brought in and then sold. But there's definitely players that have come in and LAFC want to take a really good look at them over the 6-month period or whatnot, and then ultimately make a decision if they want to buy them, transfer fee, whatever, and bring them in for the long haul. And whether he plays a lot or not. Obviously, if he plays a lot, LAFC probably picks up the transfer fee. If he doesn't, find a way onto the roster, then he probably, plays the 6 months and then he's out of here. But we'll see. I think we're going to find out pretty quickly.
Very exciting. We are live on LAFC YouTube and Facebook. Leave a comment. We're on the stretch run here. We're going to do a quick preview of CONCACAF Champions Cup. Any questions about the game Saturday? Any questions about the game tomorrow? Get them in now as we will be here in the stretch run. Let's talk about Tuesday night, second leg, CONCACAF Champions Cup against the Colorado Rapids. The Rapids played this weekend. I don't think they changed their lineup at all. Maybe one or two changes. So similar to the team Tuesday in the deep freeze. And they played St. Louis, had 2 shots, none on target. So I think we're going to see what we saw probably. I'll put the ball in your court. What do you think we're going to see Tuesday? But Colorado is going to pack it. One key for me, and we saw it unfortunately in the first leg, is you can't give up set pieces because Mihailovic is a killer, and that is the goal that gives them the 2-1 aggregate lead. Just to give you a little background, if the away goal has been eradicated by and large throughout world football, but it still holds up here in CONCACAF Champions Cup, and what it means. It has more influence. So if the aggregate is tied, so it's 2-1 Colorado, LAFC win 1-0, they will advance because they got that away goal. So away goals have been amplified. So that's what makes that Aaron Long goal so huge, because it's away. Obviously, you don't want to give Colorado a goal here because it's going to be an away goal for them. And if you give 2 away goals, it's probably curtains. But I don't see Colorado scoring much, but you got to be smart here for your LAFC to not only give away that away goal, but more importantly, find a way to break them down, because you need to score 1 goal. You need to, or the CONCACAF Champions Cup is over.
Right. And I think that'll be, the interesting part. My guess is Colorado isn't thinking, hey, we're going to go into LAFC and tie the game 0-0. I don't know how many times LAFC has been shut out at home. So my guess is it's very few. And if I'm the coach of Colorado, I'm not thinking that way. I'm thinking, yes, we want to play more defensive, lower block, and try and take advantage of, the space in behind. And I think we see a similar setup to Minnesota, although I don't think Colorado is as well built to play that way as Minnesota was. But I do think we see a similar game plan, and it's going to be, is LAFC going to be able to break down 2 blocks of 4? Right? 2 blocks of 4, or a block of 4 and a block of 5, or a block of 5 and a block of 4, however, Colorado decides to deal with it. And it's not going to be easy. But again, if the transitional moment is good, like it was in the second half of Minnesota, where as soon as, LAFC loses the ball, they're able to win it back and kind of keep that pressure mounting and mounting and mounting over the course of 90 minutes, it's going to be very tough to keep LAFC off the board. But like you said, you can't give up anything on the counter, because that away goal obviously changes things. Now you need 2. You give up 2, you got to get 4 now. So obviously, a big roller coaster at that point. But obviously, we got to make sure that the defense is tight, like it was, and I don't think we'll have too many issues there. And like you said on I think one of your tweets, that Aaron Long goal could prove very big at the end.
Ooh, huge, because I don't think that I'm confident LAFC don't allow a goal. The question is, can they score one? Because they've been pretty economical offensively, and we've seen the offense will come around, but it hasn't quite done it yet. But you had that great second half. The question is, can they score? And you would have to like their chances, but I would feel a lot better if they can get one early. If they get one early, they're advancing to the round.
I think I'm more on the opposite side of you, though, Max. I
Really?
think they will get a goal. If they get the shutout, I think they go through with a 1-2, maybe even 3-0 result. They got to make sure they clamp down the doors defensively. I know they've looked good defensively, and like you said, they've only given up 2 set-piece goals, a penalty kick where, you can't let what's the striker's name? I forgot.
Oh, Navarro.
He got through 2 or 3 guys there to set up that penalty kick. And obviously the set piece on top of the box where Georgie obviously, put it where no goalie can get it.
Yeah, Navarro played well. Georgie had the free kick. I thought Cabral played well, so you can't overlook him.
Yep.
It's got to be a very tidy defending game. You can come out to the stadium if you're not doing anything. It's Tuesday night. I know it's a school night, but get out there. Go to LAFC.com for details. You can watch it on FS2 and ViX, which is part of the TUDN. And I did watch some Champions Cup games. I typed in the matchup on YouTube, and there is a stream there. Should be the case. But come out to the stadium and watch it. Come say hello. Vu wanted to say, hey, Benny, Northwood High School.
Hello. Timberwolves.
Is that where you went to high school?
That's my high school, man. I went there.
All right, Vu, we got it. We got some love there. Last call for any comments. There was one I wanted to get back to. About who should be the next bobblehead. I don't know. We've had a Vela bobblehead. We've had a Bob Bradley bobblehead. We've had a Bwanga. I think it's time for a Benny bobblehead. No?
A Bob Bradley bobblehead. That's a good one.
I have it here. I'll have to show it. It's got a cap on. It's pretty cute.
Oh, it's got a hat on?
Yeah.
You need the big bald head.
I remember Will Ferrell on the first season, how he said Bob has a perfectly round head.
I remember that.
It was pretty funny. Remember some great content year one. But one last thing. It's a run of home games. So next Saturday, LAFC, New York City FC, just like the World Series, baby, LA, New York. So come out to the stadium for that. That will be wrapping up the week. Great stuff, Benny. We'll be back here next Monday.
I'm looking forward to it, Max.
Oh, and Gomez says, I have an extra one. I'll trade you for a Bwanga. He has an extra Bob Bradley one. Will Ferrell bobblehead. Great idea.
It's a good one.
Good one. I think I will Pilar, which is, by the way, my sister's name. I will pass that on to the powers that be. Maybe we'll get the Will Ferrell bobblehead. Until next week, Inside LAFC here on YouTube and Facebook. Good stuff, Benny. We'll talk soon.